Hello and welcome to GCSE OPA Sociology. And today we're going to be looking at what a survey is. Now, the next coming lessons on research methodology are going to be pretty short lessons. So just something to bear in mind. You might want to add on to that by making sure you're coming and asking me for some resources on that, just a bit more detail about each one of the methodologies. Okay, to start off with, you'll do now, without looking in your books or without any support, try to write out a definition for each one of these key concepts. Now, this is something we went over in class, and it's something I'm just going to talk through one by one after 5 minutes. So just pause the video, give yourself 5 minutes, write them down, and then I'll feed back and see if they match with what you've got. Right, so first off, a hypothesis is essentially a prediction you're making about your research project. Okay, and sometimes they're phrased in a question, but it's essentially just a prediction that you're making, a bit like in the natural sciences. So let's say if I was researching divorce in the UK, I might then make the prediction that divorce rates have increased over the last 20 years in the UK, and I'm essentially testing whether that is true or false. Okay, then moving on to aims. So aims, these are the sub questions or tasks that you're going to be completing that are really guiding your research project. So generally you have 2 to 4. And to give an example, linking back to that divorce study, you might ask a question, try to answer the question, well, what are people's attitudes towards divorces today? You might try to work out just purely statistical research, have the number of divorces increased? Something along the lines of that. So you're just going to be asking these sub-questions and they're going to guide you. A pilot study, so that is really before you get kicking off with your main research project. And if you've got anything along the lines of mentioning a demonstration or a shorter version of your research, you're testing it, you're taking it for a test run, then that's what a pilot study is, essentially a smaller demo of what you're going to do. And a peer review, it has the same premise, and instead of you doing a small beta version or a small demonstration of your study, you're going to get your peers to look over your study. So that might be, if you're a sociologist, you go to your department of other sociologists to review whatever it is you're doing. Okay, and then an ethical code. So these are just the moral rules you follow to try and ensure that participants are not being misled or harmed. The methodology, so that's the actual research approach you're taking. So that might be something like an interview, a questionnaire, something like that. And that's really things that we're going to be looking at in a bit more detail later on. And then finally, a sample. So the sample is the list of people in your research. And a sampling frame, like a register. You will then choose from that sampling frame a way of really picking people. So you might have a probability or a non-probability sample. We're going to go into that in a bit more detail in the coming lessons. Okay, so the first task, just write down a definition here for what you think is meant by a survey. So just pause the video and then I'll talk you through it after. And you've got a stretch and challenge there. I want you to ask yourself, is this mainly an approach associated with a quantitative or a qualitative research methodology? Right, so simply put, a survey or surveys are like snapshots in time. They attempt to show the researcher the behavior and attitudes of individuals at the moment the survey was completed. Okay, so it's just giving you an insight into that social world, just like a photo. Okay, people's attitudes and beliefs and behaviors right in the moment you are researching. And I just want you to note down really the 2 main ways in which people collect surveys, or the types. So There's a telephone survey, so that might be someone literally on the phone talking you through the questions, or it may be postal or online. So you might get emails every now and then, or maybe postal, so it might be something like a census. They are generally as well quantitative, so they're generally structured. Again, they can be structured in the form of interviews or questionnaires. And like I said, it might be a telephone interview you undertake, or it might be a postal questionnaire. So just make a note of those examples. Right, so for task 3, I'm just going to talk through these strengths and weaknesses, and I'd like you to make a note of these. So surveys, remember this is predominantly a quantitative approach. So therefore they're generally reliable. They're something that can be easily repeated. There's a set way of answering those questions, a set wording, a set ordering, and that's exactly it. They're also representative. So not only are they reliable, which means they can be repeated, but they're also representative because they're so easy to do, and you can get a lot of people, you can therefore reflect a lot more accurately the population being studied. So instead of maybe an unstructured interview where you might only have 10 participants, you can have hundreds, if not thousands, that you asked. And because it's reliable and because it's looking for really closed questions, okay, which can easily be quantifiable and put into numbers, it's really easy to get a correlation to see whether it's, increase, decrease, something along those lines. And then finally, it's very cheap to use, okay, because it's done en masse. It's something that if that was interviews with, say, 1,000 people, it's going to cost you a fortune, but it's something you can do quickly. Some of the weaknesses, though, it can be confusing and it can be time consuming depending on how you've done it. It is low on validity as well. So you're not really looking to get depth in your answers. You're really doing really clean, closed, clear-cut responses. And you can get researcher desirability. So that's essentially just this idea that the participant might give you an answer that they perceive you are going to like. So that's the whole idea of desirability. So they might, instead of saying, I don't know, they are from a low income group, they're going to say that they're from a middle or high income group to look good. Okay, and then finally, a bit off topic for research methods. I just really want to do a bit of recall and really take your time with this. And just seeing as it's been 10 weeks of doing sociology, I just want you to really mind map anything you know about the following theories below. Okay, just pause the video. It might be half an hour you pause it for, it might be less, might be more. And then I'm just going to talk through, I'm just going to, not in a lot of detail, but I'm just going to say which concepts might be associated with which theory and just see if you've included them or not. Right, so we're going to start with the functionalists. So you might think of concepts like value consensus, organic analogy. For the Marxists, you might look at concepts like capitalist superstructure, false consciousness, ruling class ideology. For feminist theory, it might be patriarchy. For the interactionalists, it might be self-concept, labeling theory, it might be self-fulfilling prophecy, social interaction. For New Right, it might be underclass, culture of poverty, welfare dependency, it might be deviancy, all of those.